Podcasting, the final frontier. This is the Hammer Podcast. Its 30-minute mission: to rehash geeky topics, to seek out new bastions of nerdiness, to timidly go where the more talented have gone before.
Greetings and welcome to the Hammer Podcast, the official podcast of thehammerstrikes.com. I'm your host, Gene Hendricks, and there is a bit of a longer episode in store for you this time, so we'll just get some business out of the way real quick and then we'll get right into it. First order of business is we have a new iTunes review, and that comes from my good friend, Mr. Rob Kelly of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Now, he's given me a 5-star review with the title, Warm and Genial Nerd Discussions. He writes, Gene Hendricks is a warm and engaging host for this podcast full of random geeky discussions. The vibe is relaxed and engaged and highly recommended. And I would like to thank Rob for that for a number of reasons. Obviously, it takes time to go onto iTunes, log in, leave the review, etc. So, thank you for that. And also, Rob is one half of the duo that is primarily responsible for me starting a podcast, so it feels extra special to get that feedback from him. I thank you again, Rob. I really appreciate it. Now on to some other business. The Hammer Podcast is now available on Stitcher Radio, so you have another avenue to download all these geeky goodness. Now, lastly, we have some website information, not thehammerstrikes.com, but related. Not only do we have some reworked Patreon stuff on the Patreon page, including at the highest donor level, I will be doing some special podcasts that will only be available for those donors. They will not be on the regular feed. They will be special to Patreon only. That will start fairly soon, actually. I plan to do a number of them throughout the year. I can't give you an exact number because it kind of all depends on how things line up. Secondly, along the website lines, we now have a Cafe Press store, and that will be at cafepress.com/thehammerstrikes. You'll be able to buy merchandise, t-shirts, hats, what have you, bags, etc., etc., with not only the logo of the website, but also the logo of the podcast. So head on over there and see what kind of stuff we got. And I've purchased things through Cafe Press before, so I can tell you they are very high quality stuff, and all the proceeds, obviously after Cafe Press gets its cut, go to help out the website and the podcast. So I really appreciate anyone that buys anything over there. Now, as I said, we have a fairly longer than normal episode this time out, so we will take a quick break and get right into the discussion. See you on the other side.
We all remember seeing years ago those futuristic drawings saying what the future's going to be.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing.
Gleaming buildings, fast monorails. This is the future.
That was all started by a mind.
Twice the size of Manhattan.
We want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Walt Disney World.
Better than any other urban environment in America.
Two True Freaks proudly presents.
We hope that it will be unlike anything else on this earth.
Golf courses, campgrounds, stores, hotels.
Earning My Ears.
A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for everyone who participates. We're ready to go right now.
Earning My Ears, a Walt Disney World-centric podcast, is available monthly at twotruefreaks.com.
Welcome back. And I got something special for you again this month. I know last month was a high point, but we have another one because this is going to feature my very first ever returning guest. And that guest would be the other Scott, Mr. Scott Gardner. How are you, sir?
Ooh, I'm doing good. I hold a special distinction on the show. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got together and we talked about Star Trek the Motion Picture, and we're going to be talking about another passion that we both share, and that will be Disney.
Yes, indeed.
And this was all brought on by a blog post that I did at thehammerstrikes.com. And why you would listen to the show and not go to the blog, I have no idea. But make sure you go there. And I'm just going to read the blog post because I don't write very long things. Mainly because of my attention span and also the attention span of the people that go to the blog. But this was originally posted on May 12th, 2016, and is titled, Why I Like Disney. Quote, as a middle-aged man, you might think that I put kiddie things behind me. For the most part, you're right. I don't play with toys, and the ones that I have from my childhood are used by my daughter. I play video games infrequently at best. I read comic books, but now it tends to be either for nostalgia or research, as I haven't purchased a new comic in years. One thing that many people consider to be kiddie, though, I don't, and that's Disney. Specifically, Walt Disney and his vision. The vision that the future is still out there waiting to be discovered, and that it is better than today. Yes, better than today. Not some post-apocalyptic wasteland where humans struggle to survive. Not a world overrun by zombies or alien invaders. No, a great big beautiful tomorrow where science and humanity has advanced to the point where we can actually do stuff that we only dreamed about a few years ago. This is still shown for the most part at the theme parks. Oh, I know they're expensive to travel to and all, but if you've never been to one, I'd say it's worth it. Yes, there are the flavor of the month tie-ins, Frozen, but that tends to be expected since it is a for-profit endeavor. If you look, though, you will see an ideal to strive towards. Take some time to visit the Carousel of Progress to see how far we've come. Visit Liberty Square and revive your sense of pride in America. Take a walk through Tomorrowland and see where we might get to. Heck, just take a look at Walt's presentation for his idea of Epcot that could have been. No, I mean actually watch the YouTube video, don't skim it. This is what Disney means to me. Hope for the future, rooted in the planning of today. In a world that seems to be getting crazier every day, we need Walt Disney's vision now more than ever. Unquote. And I posted that on Facebook, as I always do, but I also cross-posted it to the Earning My Ears Facebook group. And that is where I got a response from you, Scott. Let me ask you, is it just my punchy prose style, or was there something else that caught your attention?
It was the sentiment behind it. I'm sure we'll get more into this as we talk, but I share the sentiment that, Disney is really cool in the fact that because it is such a large thing that has now been around for pushing 100 years at this point. Disney as an actual company entity started in 1923, so we're fast coming up on 100 years, and in that time it's meant a lot of things to a lot of different people, from the characters to the animated films to the live action films to the theme parks to interactive media, to all these different things that Disney is, that Disney's not any one thing. And so I'm always fascinated by what hooked people that are really into Disney, because generally speaking, I find that my hook is not a common one. So your post really struck a chord with me because that's my hook. Disney the futurist, Disney the optimist. That was really the thing that caught me, because going to Walt Disney World as an adult for the first time, and really, for all intents and purposes, really my first time. I went once when I was a child and really didn't remember it very well. So for all intents and purposes, my real, actual first trip, I was an adult in my, I was in my 30s, early 30s at that point, and went expecting to be kind of just tolerant of the whole thing, because I expected just a big kiddie amusement park, and totally not what I got. What I got out of it was exactly what you said in your post, that this was that vision of the future that, call me naive, whatever you want, but I still believe in that. A very Star Trekian, a very, Gene Roddenberry style positive vision of the future. And I didn't know a lot about Walt Disney other than the fact of, Walt Disney cartoon maker.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't realize that there was this whole other facet to him that was Walt Disney, the optimistic futurist. And that's the side of Walt and the side of Disney that continues to fascinate. And I completely agree with you, man, that's one of the reasons I fell in love with the theme parks, is because it's really the one place left in the world I can really think of where that not only does that positive spirit carry forward, and we get that reassurance of a positive future and all that, but it's really the only place I can think of where even the big dreams of the future that we had, say like at the 1939-40 World's Fair, and then again at the 64-65 World's Fair, there were things like Futurama, that, and I'm not talking the TV show, but there were at both of those fairs there was an exhibit called Futurama that projected essentially that quasi-utopian Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. Now, Disney had nothing to do with Futurama, but it's kind of that whenever you think back, especially if you're of a certain age, whenever you think back to how the future was when you were a kid, that's kind of that collective vision that we all have, of big shining cities and broad highways and maybe motorized vehicles, maybe flying cars, all that sort of thing. And it's that kind of vision, and that was the hook for me, because I think David Brinkley said it best. There's a little clip from Brinkley. I actually use it in the intro for Earning My Ears, where he's talking about, remember, those visions there used to be of, the city of tomorrow. This is an exact quote. I can't quote it word for word, but it was something to the effect of, remember how the future used to look with gleaming buildings and fast, sleek monorails and all that? He goes, well, it never really happened except here. And he's standing in front of the Contemporary Resort at Walt Disney World. And, I completely agree with that. It's the one place it actually happened. And that's cool to me.
Yeah, that's the thing I find is most people, you say Disney, and they have one of two pictures in their head. Mickey Mouse and the cartoon characters.
Mm-hmm.
Or the theme parks.
Right.
But when they think the theme parks, and I was guilty of this too. I mean, the first time, I went to Walt Disney World twice when I was a kid. Both times with my family, we drove down. I know we were there for the 15th anniversary, because I remember the mug that my mom still has, we got down there. But we went twice when I was little. The next time I went was part of our senior class trip in high school, which is coincidentally also the first time I ever flew on an airplane. And after that, I went once in college with my then girlfriend, now wife. But that was part of a trip that, it was a timeshare spiel that, they brought us down there, and so, what? Okay, well, we're not buying anything, bye. And then we went and had fun. But except when I was a kid, it was, holy crap, this is amazing. When I went in high school and when I went in college, it was, wow, I remember this is fun. But I didn't really get more into it than that, because it was such a short time. Then, 2 years ago, 2014, that's when I met you for the first time. We went down and...
Has that been 2 years already?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's when we went down for Kira's first time, because I am of the opinion that you cannot go to Walt Disney World with anyone younger than 5, because they're not going to appreciate it.
I hear that a lot, and not to tangent us, but yeah. I hear that a lot from folks, from parents, and I have to say I disagree with it, only because, for one thing, this is with the caveat that realize it's going to be a lot of work with younger children, especially with like infants and that sort of thing. But it's not about them remembering it; it's about you remembering it. It's about the memories that you make, with that small child. And I'm also of the opinion, get them while they're young. Get them in there while they're young. Get them hooked right away. That sort of thing. But yeah. So I'm an advocate for even taking the wee tots. Of all ages.
You're an advocate for getting as many people down there as possible, because you're trying to increase the profit margin.
Well, yes and no. I mean,
Right.
it does directly affect me, of course, but at the end of the day, I kind of have Walt's philosophy, the whole thing of, quality will out and that sort of thing. The great thing about Walt, when it comes to profits is, according to, all reports, Walt didn't care the least about money. Money was just a means to an end to him. So he wasn't about, profits and margins and being rich and everything. He just wanted to be able to do what he could do. And that, I think that's another wonderful testament to him, was that, whether it was toward the end of his life when he had the money finally to do the things he wanted, or whether it was at other times of his life where he was broker than broke, he's, through the power of his personality, he could do the impossible. He could move mountains and, do the things that he did. I think that's incredible. To have that kind of vision, that even when other people can't see that vision clearly, and when other people might scoff at that vision, to still have it, hold it, but more importantly, realize it. That's mind-blowing stuff to me. That I think that's cool. It just makes him that much more fascinating to me.
Oh yeah, and that is one of the great disappointments of my life, is that I never got to see Walt Disney. I mean, I've seen videos and so on and so forth, but he died before I was born, and so I've never had Walt Disney come into my house every Sunday night and present things like Disneyland, or show me that Epcot video, which I will be linking to in the show notes, by the way. Because that's the kind of thing, and don't get me wrong, I became an engineer because of Scotty on Star Trek. So, I like the optimistic thing, but I'm pretty sure that if I had seen those Disneyland or any of the shows that Walt hosted himself on a regular basis, I might have gone a different direction. I might have gone into more of the theme park thing. And I'm going to tangent us again. I actually had this conversation with a new coworker recently, and I explained to him the difference between an amusement park and a theme park. For example, Six Flags Great Adventure, which is about an hour from me, where I live, is an amusement park. Mm-hmm. Yes, it may have some type of cohesive narrative a little bit. I mean, because they have Batman and Joker and Superman, which are all roller coasters. And they may have a somewhat interesting queue line for those individual things. But a theme park is Walt Disney World. It is Disneyland. It is something where once you walk through that gate, you are in another world.
Right.
And it is completely immersive. And it's one of the few things that Disney has over everybody else. I mean, in Orlando, you also have Universal Studios, which is another one that is right up there, but it ain't Disney. Right. I'm sorry to the Hunsworth family, but it ain't there. And the fact that Walt could create not only Disneyland, but Walt Disney World, even though he didn't see the fruition of that dream, is just amazing. And he did it all because he said, I'm going to do this.
Right.
That's it. That's all. He just put his mind to it and did it. And he got everybody aligned. And that's why Epcot is what it is now and not the experimental prototype City of Tomorrow like it was originally supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And I know you don't have inroads on that side of things, but I've got ideas to bring that original Epcot to life. I know where it should go and everything. So, if you have... When you see your boss at breakfast next, just mention that. The guy with the ears. But that... And you had mentioned Gene Roddenberry, and as I had talked to you about before, I put Walt Disney and Gene Roddenberry into a very exclusive club.
Right.
But I put Walt a little bit up because Gene was a futurist. He was, we will get there. Humanity will be like this someday. Walt was the same way, except he said, I'm going to lead us there.
Right.
and I need that TARDIS so I can go back and stop him from, getting addicted to cigarettes. Because if he had another 5-10 years, what would our world be like today?
Well, he had, not long before he passed away, he had told his son-in-law, Ron Miller, that he wished he had another 15 years. That he felt that if he had another 15 years, that he could change the world. And I've often fantasized, what was he talking about? What would the world look like if Walt had gotten his extra 15 years? And I would love, I wish I was a more imaginative person. I wish I was a better writer, because I think that would be the subject of a fascinating, book or movie or something, just call it something like The 15.
Oh, wow.
You know, and do like an alternate. There's that one writer, I can't remember his name, Turtle Dove, I think, that does all those alternate history novels. Mm-hmm. I would love to see like an alternate history novel of Walt getting his 15 years.
Oh,
but,
wow.
It'd have to be incredibly well researched. Plus, it would probably have to stretch the imagination a little bit, because nobody really knows what he was talking about,
Right.
I'm sure it wasn't just Epcot, the city, that there was other things brewing in his mind as well that maybe he never shared with anybody. So I've always been curious, though, what was he talking about? What changes? And I think a lot of it would have to do with just the structure of the world, the structure of how we live our daily lives. I think things would be very different had he had the time. But unfortunately, he was a lifelong chain smoker, and it caught up to him in a big way.
Yeah. Well, just think of it this way. I mean, let's say his vision of Epcot, which was not just the city, it was also the industrial complex attached to it. If that had taken off, if that had been a success, you would see that pattern of cities, of urban and suburban life spread across the country. And I may be naive, but if you had that easy form of public transportation and city layout, you wouldn't have the inner city. You wouldn't have a lot of what's the term? Urban blight, rundown areas. Of course, that would, kind of kill the superhero thing, because they always seem to fight in abandoned warehouses. But you would have, and the way he was describing it in the video was he would be getting all these big corporations to come and do their R&D and everything in that industrial complex. Imagine GE and General Motors and all these big corporations, which he had ties to from the World's Fair and everything.
Right.
Working together instead of profit. They're working to actually move humanity ahead.
Right.
That is an amazing thought. If he could have gotten that done, it would have shifted everything. I don't think we would have gotten a lot of the problems we had in the 70s with, like the oil crisis and stuff, because you would have had Epcot's people movers. So people would have had cars, but they wouldn't have needed cars. And it would just progress from there. Maybe we would have had Tesla Motors 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
With electric cars. Because instead of, there's skyrocketing gas prices, it's up to $1 a gallon, oh no! I am being facetious, I'm sorry.
But no, I think you make a good point, because, I think there's two great possibilities. Is that Epcot, the city itself, would have worked during the time that Walt was still alive to oversee it, to be the driving force behind it, to be the pull for industry to want to play ball and use his city as their test bed and everything, as opposed to, you look at the way industry is now. Inventions are not, these people are not open as far as the things that they're working on and the new developments, because of things like industrial espionage and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But back during those days, you had things like World's Fairs, where these industries would go, and they'd kind of show off, here's what we're working on, here's the bright new ideas that we have for tomorrow's living, that sort of thing. So I think Walt could have gotten those guys to play ball and to come and basically demonstrate in this living model. So, when you're talking about other cities would have followed, I have to be honest, my natural inclination was, well, I don't know about that, because look at the things he did come up with that were fantastic ideas that never caught on anywhere else. But you make a good point that, I don't know, I still want to believe, because I think I think the reason for, say, you mentioned it yourself, people movers. The people mover was an incredible piece of technology. It was an incredible invention that could have changed, not just, our cities, it could have changed the world. Should have changed the world. Same thing with monorail transportation. Yet, for some reason, never really caught on, because it became just another piece of the landscape of Disneyland. It became, for all intents and purposes, just another ride to people, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But I think if you actually had this city that people could come to and visit and see that this works there, then yeah, maybe there was a bigger chance that, okay, now this is no longer a fantasy. Here it is, the blueprint for how to do America's cities bigger, better, better for people, better designed. So I don't know. It's interesting to fantasize about. I've often wondered, how would Walt deal with some of the very real world problems that he would have had, that he would have been faced with, because this gets into the realm of conspiracy theory a little bit, but there's stories out there of people that over the years have come up with incredible inventions that could replace the automobile, and someone steps in, whether it's private industry or government or whoever, and either hushes them up or buys them out and then quietly just shelves the project because there's too much money to be made in the existing system. They don't want to replace it. So, there's those types of things too. How would he have dealt with that when he comes up with this shining example and other people don't want to play ball because their palms are not going to be greased the same way or not as lucratively anymore? So I think the whole thing is just a wonderful exercise in might have beens,
Right. Yeah, unfortunately it is, but it's just so nice to think about, because, one of the things you said is, if people could have come to this working city and seen a monorail, seen a people mover. And that, I think, was kind of a problem, because Walt was doing this in his theme park. And when 90% of the population goes to a theme park, it's just to have fun. And I have no problem with that. I love going to theme parks to have fun, and amusement parks, and carnivals, and what have you. But most people, that's all they see. They don't... how many times do you hear, if you're in Liberty Square, I don't want to go to the Hall of Presidents, it's boring.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be a thrill ride. Learn some history.
I used to let that really... I'll be honest, I used to really let that get under my skin. And it still does a little bit, to a certain degree, when people rag on the Hall of Presidents or the American Adventure. My own wife can't keep her eyes open through the American Adventure. But I think that for a lot of it, generally speaking, a lot of times that's the younger set. They're more inclined to think of a theme park almost as a fancy amusement park. So they're there to, ride the rides and experience the thrills and that sort of thing. But that's the wonderful thing about the Disney parks, is that I think if you keep coming back to experience them over and over again, as you age, you're going to discover other depths and other levels to it, such as the story that's going on in each of the different areas and the different themed lands, the different attractions themselves. But also, hopefully, if we're all doing our jobs right at Disney, you'll gain an interest in how did this come to be? What's the backstory on the story? And then that's when you start to get interested in the creation of the whole thing, and then that itself lends into learning about, it all goes back to Walt and what's the genesis of all this, and both where was he coming from, what was the idea, but also where was he going with that idea. And so it's all very cyclical. It really just all depends on people getting that hook, whatever that hook is for them, and then staying interested long enough to realize that there's bigger, more meaningful things going on here than just riding a roller coaster.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does. I guess I'm a little too cynical in even the people, our age that go there. They're a good number of them. They just go there because their kids want to go there, and they're just putting up with it.
Right.
And that's part of the problem, is they don't open their eyes. They don't see what's actually right in front of them. And it's like when we were there and we would ride the monorail into Magic Kingdom, and I would be looking for all these different things. Most people are sitting there, they're just, they're looking around, or they're staring at their phone, or they're trying to keep the kid on the seat. I'm there, I'm looking, and I'm pointing things out to my wife and daughter. I'm like, no, look, there's a metal Mickey sitting over there on the top of that building.
Right.
And most people don't, I would point that out, and then everyone in the car would be, oh, really? Well, you could have seen it too if you're looking out the window. If you were actually looking at this stuff, rather than at the sky or the squirrel over there. That's something that drives me insane. And it's mainly my family. We were at, I think it was the one day we decided to take the boats over to the Magic Kingdom, which is not normal for us because my wife gets motion sickness. But we get off and we're walking down the ramp and going over to the security check, to have them go through the bags, and yes, you only have water and crackers and sunscreen and stuff. And my wife says, "Oh, look at the squirrel." We're in Walt Disney World, and you're looking at a friggin' squirrel? Are you kidding? The most magical place on earth, and you're looking at a rodent that we could see at home. Thank you very much. But my sister did the same thing when she was little, and we went, so I don't know. Oh, look, there's a duck. Yeah, it's not Donald. I don't care.
No, I do see that a lot, though. But again, I do think that that's one of the great things, is that hopefully, eventually, people will start to notice those finer details, the storytelling element that's going on all around them, and that's really where my fascination with the whole thing is at the moment, is going and continually doing that deeper dive, and realizing that the men and women that have designed these things have really done their homework on this, because there's a lot of times you'll catch design elements that may require some knowledge of a particular bit of history or a particular discipline in the arts or in engineering or something like that. I love stuff like that. That's really cool, because then it gives you layers.
Right.
So there's the surface impression that you have of, oh, look at this is really cool, but then you start to notice these details and the thought that in the process that goes into the creation of these things, and that really fascinates to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I lived down there, you wouldn't be able to keep me out of the parks. I'll be home at 9:00 tonight. I'm gonna swing by Magic Kingdom after work. That's one of the things that I love about, and I've only ever been to Walt Disney World. I've never been to Disneyland, which you now have one up on me. But it's like there is no square inch that someone didn't put thought into.
Right.
Even just a wall that all it's there to do is to get you from point A to point B without walking into something. And just the little touches that they put in there. It's like when you and I walked around Hollywood Studios, and you were pointing the stuff out at me on the backlot sets, and it's like, wow, I never would have thought of the things that people put just in a shop window.
Right.
You know, that anyone that's just walking through there because it's a shortcut, they'll never notice it. But if you take the time and you go around and you look at this stuff, there's a story to everything.
Right.
And it's amazing. It constantly amazes me about it, which is one of the reasons that we're going back in April. I mean, the main thing about any of it, ignore this is popular right now, so we're going to slap it on everything stuff. It's just for me anyway. I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, walking down Main Street, USA, is just an uplifting experience.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just being there, and it could be walking under Spaceship Earth, or walking, down towards Star Tours, or any of that. It's just, I get annoyed about the people that they're walking down and it's just stop in front of you. But even that, it goes away really quick because I am in Walt Disney World. But especially in the Magic Kingdom, especially in Tomorrowland and Adventureland and Frontierland. Fantasyland's nice, but it's not. I don't know why it's not for me as much. I see Fantasyland's more for my daughter.
Right.
But the other ones, I mean, I still remember the first time when I was a kid climbing the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse. Because I saw it in the film, which
right.
I don't even think people watch today, which is a shame because it's a brilliant movie.
It's funny because that was my very first bit of Disney homework I ever did. After we came home from that first visit, as an adult, my son had asked me about the Swiss Family treehouse when we went up in it, and he was asking, he was like, basically, tell me the story, Daddy. And I knew I had seen the movie as a kid, but I could only remember the barest of details, and I think I confused a lot of the story with Tarzan, to be honest with you. So when we got home, I rented it to watch the movie and refamiliarize myself, and it's one of those things that I encourage other people to do that as much as possible. To try to learn the sources of the different, if they're fascinated with a particular facet of, say, an attraction or a themed land or something like that, try to find out, okay, what were the inspirations for this, and seek that material out. I've been doing that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Scott and I named our show what we named it, Earning My Ears, because I feel like I'm constantly doing that. I'm constantly seeking out more information on this place that I love so much, and that's just a lot of fun. If you, just as a just off the top of my head example, you see, like, for example, the Liberty Tree in Liberty Square.
Yes,
there's a story behind that, and there's a movie that's all based off of and everything. So finding those little things out, and then going out and seeking out what were the inspirations for the Imagineers, why did they put this particular design element in there, what's the deeper story. I'm fascinated with that, and that's what I've been trying, time permitting. That's the sort of thing I've been trying to bring to Earning My Ears, and it's the kind of thing that I wish I could do more and more often, bigger and better, is really be able to take those kind of deep dives.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of thing I love, because on Turner Classic Movies, they had Johnny Tremaine on one time, and I had never seen it, so it was great. We were sitting there watching it, and they're singing the Liberty Tree song, and it was, I think this was after we got back, but all I could think of was, wow, imagine having that song running in your head when you're walking in Liberty Square near the Liberty Tree. And oh man, that would just be great. That's also one of my favorite areas of Walt Disney World is Liberty Square.
Yep.
Because it's the confluence of a couple different areas. It's not huge compared to other things, but it's got some of the best stuff in it, including, I know, Scott Riffin's favorite restaurant.
He's going again, the lucky dog.
Well, that's one of the places I made sure that we went when we were there. I am of the meticulous planning variety of people.
Right.
So every day that we were in Walt Disney World, I had a lunch reservation for us. I knew what time we were eating and where we were eating. And that's one of the places. So we would more or less build, okay, we want to spend this day at Magic Kingdom. Well, okay, let's look. I had to go through, I don't know how many restaurant menus to figure out where my daughter would actually eat something. I can tell you this, there ain't many places in Epcot.
That she would eat, you mean?
That she would eat.
Aww.
She's picky. I had to make sure they had a kids menu, and I had either chicken tenders, pizza, or something else. At this point, she was not eating hamburgers.
Right.
She still doesn't eat hot dogs. So I had to make, there's a very narrow amount of things that she does eat, so I had to make sure. Luckily, the Liberty Tree was one of the places that had sufficient choices for her. She's a lot better now, luckily. So, but that's one of the places that I had to go, because it's not for the food, it's for the ambiance, it's for what's on the walls. I am not of the Scott Rifen variety. I will not push people out of the way while they're eating to see something. But I came close a few times. I remember walking around while we were waiting to be seated, just taking a look at everything. Because, you know, I am one of those guys that if you got stuff around for me to see, I'm not going to sit down and look at it. I'm going to walk up to it and look.
Right.
And just the whole area down there, it's... I know it's supposed to be colonial America, but it is just such a great place to be, especially if you're, and I don't mean to sound xenophobic, but if you're an American, it has so much more resonance. I mean, I can't see someone from another country getting the same things that you and I do when we go there.
Right.
And it's not to put them down. It's just we have that connection. We are Americans. We know this story. We know the history here. We can get more out of it. It's like if I know if I am in London, England, which I have been on a number of occasions, and I am very happy about that. I don't get the history to some of these places that someone that lives in that country would. If I was there with Andy Leyland, he would get more out of the experience of certain areas than I would. I know that, because he knows what's going on. He knows the history of these things. I don't. It's just the way it is. And in some ways, Liberty Square, to me, is better than going to, like, Washington, D.C. Because while Washington has the monuments, it has the Smithsonian and everything, it doesn't have the spirit that you have in Liberty Square, if you understand what I mean. This is, I don't know how to put it into words, and I may be digging myself into a deeper hole here, but it's like Liberty Square was made not to be a 100% historical recreation. It was meant to have the spirit behind the move for independence. We can do this on our own. We know how to do this better. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. It could just be the fact that I'm already on a high from being at the Magic Kingdom, but it's just that you walk there and you see how it is, not how it was, how people felt.
Right.
You know, it's this drive towards, we can make a better future for ourselves, thank you very much. And that's a lot of what, you know, goes back to Walt's feelings on things. You know, we can get there. From where we are now, we can get there. It's not dream of a beautiful future, ? We've gotten there. He had a drive and, I think, a plan to get us to Tomorrowland. He wanted us to get to the stuff in Tomorrowland to force Tomorrowland to go to the next step, because, hey, we've already achieved this. What's next? You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I didn't discover until my 30s. I didn't discover that part of Walt Disney. Because for the longest time, it was, oh yeah, those are those videos that we have sitting over there. Those are as much as I love the cartoons, what be they the shorts, the feature animation, the specials, or anything, they're terrific. Don't get me wrong. They're groundbreaking in a lot of ways. One of my favorite films still is Fantasia.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nothing compared to the reality that was Walt Disney. And that pains me to say was Walt Disney. But I just wish that we could have, if not Walt, have someone or some group of people pick up that ball and run with it.
Yeah, you and me both.
It's almost like we need to, you, Ryford, and I need to get together and stage a takeover of the futurist portion of the Walt Disney Company. We could do it too. We could do it. Like I said, I've got ideas for specifically for Epcot. I know where we could put it. I know what how we could make that vision a reality, and we'll see what happens. See what comes up. But we need that chance. We need someone to say, this isn't about getting back our $4 billion investment in Star Wars. This is about taking what we're earning in this section and shunting some of the money over here to the Imagineers, to the people that will push us into a new realm, and not just replace the Maelstrom with a new ride.
Well, I think part of that comes, there's one of my favorite quotes, Disney related, and and on this whole subject of the future and Tomorrowland and progress and all that sort of thing, is in the original version of the Carousel of Progress. Our host on that attraction is Father. And Father says, progress is not just moving ahead, it's dreaming and hoping and building a better way of life. Progress takes a lot of people wanting it and willing to work for it. And I think that's an important message that's been kind of lost. It's funny because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I mean a whole lot lately. Basically, for the past year, my preoccupation has been with kind of looking back at tomorrow. You were there last year when the bunch of us, a whole bunch of us from Two True Freaks, fellow podcasters and just, friends and family, all got together in Long Island. And the reason for the get together last year was to get together for an event called Eternal Con, which was taking place on Long Island. It was just a gathering of nerds going to a comic book convention essentially. But a night or two before we were about to fly out, realizing where it was that we were going to be going to, I called up my buddy Paul Spataro, who lives on Long Island and who I was going to be staying with while we were there. And I said to Paul, you got to forgive me, Paul. I said, I really don't know New York City area geography very well, but are you anywhere near Flushing Meadows? And he says, well, from where I live, it's about an hour roughly, so no, but it's only 2 exits from where I'm going to be picking you up at LaGuardia. So, what's in Flushing Meadows? And I said, well, you take me there and I'll show you. And we went, and that became the place that we all met. And as the guys started to trickle into town, we all just kind of met there. Now, I knew a lot about the place before we ever got there, so it had a very important attachment to me for a lot of different, mostly sentimental reasons, but I'd never been there. And I was really looking forward to it. Then having actually been there, it was weird because it was like puzzle pieces started to fall into place. And that's kind of how I see this whole Disney futuristic Tomorrowland vibe. It's all little puzzle pieces that you kind of have to trace it back and like watch things kind of fall into place. And again, it tells an overall story that's in this instance not complete yet, because who knows where we're going. But I've just become fascinated by that whole thing, because there is a a connection. There's a tapestry with all of these things between Walt, of course, with Disneyland, which I got to go to, this year for the first time. I got to go back to Flushing Meadows again and explore it a little bit more than we did the first time. There's a connection there with Flushing Meadows and the World's Fair. There's a connection with Walt Disney World. And it's all one thing that's all interconnected. So now, having experienced the three of those and really gotten a chance to do a deeper dive into all three of them, I feel like I'm getting a better handle on the whole thing. But the question for myself is, a better handle on what? Because you're talking about something that's 50 to 60 years old at this point. What is the thing? And a lot of it comes down to the film Tomorrowland. I really wish that movie had done better. But what I'm starting to see happen is that there is this, I'm imagining it's pretty small, but there is this small semi-underground movement beginning to happen where the movie's starting to find its audience. It's starting to gain appreciation. And I'm predicting that, much like Tron in its day, that's only going to continue to build over time. It may never build into some big colossal thing, but if all it ever does is garner the sort of cult status that Tron did, I'm cool with that, because it only takes, a small amount of people to have a vision to change things. And that, to me, is ultimately the message I took away from that movie, is that, this idea, the ideas of, say, Walt or the 64 World's Fair or whatever, these ideas aren't dead. Sometimes life kind of beats them into the background a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We have our setbacks. We had the 3940 World's Fair. Wonderful, wonderful exposition about the world of tomorrow and lofty dreams that should have been the world that our grandfathers inherited, but then World War II broke out and changed the world forever. 64, 65 World's Fair, same thing. Lofty visions. It was much, in a lot of ways, it was almost a sequel to the 3940, having learned a few lessons and realizing, well, that one didn't quite come true, but we still have a chance. And then Vietnam happened. Mm-hmm. And again, changed at least our country in a lot of ways forever. And we lost a lot of that childlike wonder of the world and that childlike naivete about what the future could be. And that's one of the things that I become the most annoyed about when I read. I've been just devouring stuff about the World's Fair lately, reading articles and books and everything else. And a number of them, they may still have a fondness for it, but ultimately their summation of the whole thing is, oh, weren't we childish? Weren't we naive? That could have never really happened. And I don't believe that.
Right.
I think that Walt Disney was childlike and naive, but in a wonderful way, because he didn't believe in the impossible. People might tell him, Walt, that's not going to work. And when you talk to a child and you say, I'm sorry, buddy, you can't do that. That's not a thing. A child, that's actually one of the worst things you can do to a child, because you're discouraging them, because children are wonderful in the sense that they don't understand, wait a minute, what do you mean that I can't do that?
Right.
They don't have that filter in themselves. To them, if they want to build a rocket pack, then okay, they're gonna work on it and they're gonna figure it out. And Walt somehow is able to hold on to that for his entire life. This sense of, don't tell me I can't do it. I have the smartest people and I have will. And if I want it bad enough, I can make it happen. And he did, time and time and time again. His life is nothing but a lesson in don't tell me no.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that about him. I wish I could be like that. I wish more people could be like that. So, I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling, but what I really mean is, don't tell me that the ideas of the 39-40 World's Fair, the 64-65 World's Fair, were just wonderfully naive, but they could never have been reality, because that's BS. I don't buy that for a minute. If we wanted it bad enough, that would be our world. And I'm starting to make friends with people. I have a couple wonderful, they're Facebook friends. They're not people I actually know in real life, but I have a couple wonderful Facebook friends right now that are fellow cast members.
Oh, okay.
And they're fellow dreamers. They're constantly posting things about, that more futurist side of Disney enthusiasm, like you and I have. Mm-hmm. And I love it because it tells me we're not the only ones. It's like when the pins are handed out at the end of the Tomorrowland movie. There's other people out there having this vision, gaining this vision, learning. I mean, I'm kind of a new recruit myself, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So people are constantly being handed that pin, if you know what I mean, in a figurative sense. And that's wonderful to see, because that's how you change the world, but it's also how we get back the future that we used to envision, the future that we should have had, if you know what I mean. And I think that's great. So it's not lost. And I remember Chris Honeywell saying something to me when we were there last year at Flushing Meadow, something to the effect of, because I got, there were a number of times I got very emotional while we were there. And I got a little misty at one point, and I think he misinterpreted my kind of being overcome with emotion as that I was sad. And there is kind of that natural inclination at first to look at the ruins at Flushing Meadow and think, this is, how sad.
Yeah.
But I really don't see it that way. I really see it really the opposite way, is that these are the breadcrumbs that people are finding, and that can still take us to that place if people want it bad enough. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It's the dream isn't dead; it's sleeping.
Exactly.
And so,
exactly.
It's waiting for the people that are willing to take up the challenge.
Absolutely.
And I really think we need to get a group together to take up that challenge.
Just yesterday, I don't know if you saw it or not. Just yesterday, I posted a picture. So I was at what used to be Downtown Disney at Walt Disney World has become Disney Springs. That's the new name for it now. It's a retheming of the shopping and dining district, essentially.
Right.
And one of the things they have there, I think it's wonderful. They have a new restaurant there called the Boathouse. And the Boathouse, along with having all this wonderful fancy food, has aqua cars. And the aqua car was something from the 64-65 World's Fair. So I'm reading this article the other day. I was in one of the newest books that I just purchased about the World's Fair. I forget the exact name of it, but the author is Bill Cotter, Cotter. It was a really good book. And it was a picture of an aqua car driving on a body of water that could have been taken like today at Disney Springs. Same kind of vehicle and everything.
Oh, wow, okay.
But the caption under it said, was talking about the aqua car and how cool it was and that it was a thing at the fair and all that. And then underneath it said, sadly, much like monorails, the aqua car, is a thing of the past. And I just had to laugh because we got the aqua car, we got monorails. So when I was at Disney Springs yesterday, I'm crossing a bridge from one section to another, and I see in the distance coming towards me an aqua car. With a whole family in it, and, they were just having the time of their lives. So I stood there and waited until it got nice and close to me, and I took a couple pictures of it in a short video, and I posted one of the pictures to Facebook, and I just did the hashtag #TheFairLives, because that's what I'm talking about. Those little nuggets that you get like that, those people may never realize that that's a direct connection to that, but it is, and I think that's great. It just gets me excited about stuff like that, because again, maybe a kid in that car gets an interest in this thing, starts to do the research, and then the next thing you know, again, that pin's been handed over, and I love that.
Oh yeah, that's great. I just actually, as you were talking, went to Facebook and looked that picture up, and that is a beautiful shot you took. Yeah, that's one of the things that, like when my daughter is playing, a lot of times because she's an only child, and she has a huge imagination. And she'll be over there and she'll be talking or singing or whatever with her ponies or whatever. And I'll just ask her, hey, what's going on? And she'll tell me this story that she's made up. And it's wonderful. And the funny thing is, she, as I said in that article, she plays with some of my old toys, which...
Right.
So the other day, she's got the Superpowers Hall of Justice, my Michael Knight figure, and a bunch of my G.I. Joes. And the Hall of Justice is their house. Michael Knight's the dad because he's a bigger figure, and the G.I. Joes are his kids. I'm not going to tell her, no, you can't do that. That's just hilarious.
Right.
I love it when she makes stuff up. This is the same kid that will have a My Little Pony in one hand and Snake Eyes in the other, and they're playing together. And that's the kind of thing that we need. We need these kids to have their imagination, to see something like that aqua car, like riding the monorail. And it's not just a mode of transportation, it's a portal to the future. It is, wow, what if we had this at home?
Right.
You know, what if we had this wherever we went? What if we didn't have to take the turnpike to get to work? What if we had a monorail? What if we, could cross the river in an aqua car? It's what if. What if drives all of this? And it's the inspiration from the World's Fair, from Walt Disney World, from Walt himself, and some of these old videos that you see that drives it. Hey, what if we did what he just said? What if we take that inspiration and go forward? And that's something that, sadly, a lot of people don't have anymore.
Right.
It gets beat out of them. And I understand. I do not have the perfect life. I know that there are people with money troubles. I know that there's, hunger and poverty and hate and everything in the world. But what if there wasn't?
Right.
We can get there. We can move everybody up. The old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
So if we get it better, everyone will be better off. So yeah, that's why I like encouraging her to ask these questions. To have me explain things to her, because I don't tell her anything that isn't true as far as the world goes. So like she's gotten to the point now where she'll ask me a question. Let's just why is the sky blue? And I'll ask her back, do you really want to know? Because I will explain the refraction of sunlight through water vapor in the air and how that makes the sky blue.
Right.
But then every now and again, she'll answer back as, no, not right now. Because she knows I will go into this long spiel about stuff. But she at least asks.
Right.
And that's the main thing, is you have to question. You have to have this view of the world, like you said, a childlike naivete about you. To say, well, not only what if, but why not?
Why not? Exactly.
You can't do that. Why not? And most of the time people will say, well, I don't know. And that's not a reason. That means I'll do it anyway. And that's what Walt did. Actually, he probably didn't ask why not. He just said, well, I'm doing it. You can't do that. I don't care. I'm doing it. And we need more people like that. And maybe we'll start a movement or something here. I don't know. I can hope. Can I?
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've gone around and around on this, and before Skype kills the connection again, or more to the point, before your power goes out again, how about we wrap it up here? What do you say?
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on. I love talking with you about this kind of thing. I mean, between Star Trek the Motion Picture and Disney, I think that we have gotten so much passion out onto the internet. I would say airwaves, but this is not broadcast. But I hope that we have inspired someone out there to take up what we're taking up, the inspiration from Walt, from the World's Fair, from the theme parks, and let's all move forward. Let's get these things done. Let's make the future a reality. We'll get you your robot maid to get your big cups out of the dishwasher. But before we go, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you? And if they don't know yet, I'm shocked because it's, how did you find this show if you didn't know where Scott was? But why don't you tell them anyway?
Well, currently, you can find me, of course, everything that I do, have ever done, and everything is all at twotruefreaks.com. Currently, I am one of the co-hosts on Back to the Bins, which is one of our fine shows there, all about old comic books. We pick randomly selected back-issue comics, read and discuss. A lot of the other shows I'm working on at the moment are in some weird form of hiatus, limbo, whenever I can get to them type of situations. But everything that I do and participate in, you can find there at Two True Freaks. So go check it out, give it a listen, and give us some feedback. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, and just make sure that when you're finding this stuff out there, you do the hashtag #TheFairLives, because that's what we're going for.
Yes.
All right. Thank you again, Scott, for being on, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Hammer Podcasts. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send an email to gene@thehammerstrikes.com. If you like what you've heard, please visit the Patreon page, which is located at patreon.com/thehammerstrikes, and consider becoming a sponsor of the show. Please be sure to check out the Hammer Strikes on Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and YouTube. The Hammer Podcast is a proud part of the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Network.